My name is Thomas Hall, and I'm the author of Anew, The History of Civilization. And I would like to share some thoughts and experiences. But while sharing these thoughts and experiences, I want you to question everything. Question everything I say, but not only question it, I want you to go and I want you to look up the resources that I'm going to make available to you. I want you to look at the cover. And on the cover we're talking about one. The word anew itself means one. A-N-U, U-N-A. When you hear people talking about they bilateral or they talk different languages, in all languages, you have to start from one direction. Some languages they move from right to left. Some languages move from left to right. You could see on the ambulance sometimes. One good example is looking at the news and you see NATO. You will see NATO, then you will see OTAN, because one person from this region will see it one way, one person from another region will see it the other way. The history of civilization. I want to start with the word civilization. When I'm talking about civilization, I'm talking about humanity. Another name for the knowledge of the letters is semiotics. Semiotics is the science of the study of signs and symbols. The study of signs and symbols, when you look around, you see a lot of signs and symbols. Everybody has a sign. Everybody has a symbol. Your sign is your signature. When you look at the word signature, you see sign, you see nature. That's why when you sign your name to your check or whatever, somebody could go back and trace it and evaluate and show that it's your signature because it has your nature. It's your signature. Now I want to emphasize the symbols. We have many symbols on earth. We have many symbols in education. Education itself is a symbol. When you look at the symbols, the most important symbols are what? You see the equal symbol, you see the multiplication symbol, you see the stop sign, you see many signs. Our brain is controlled by these signs and symbols. The most important symbols that we deal with is the letters. I know you might look at other symbols and don't see it, but look at the McDonald's symbols and see what that suggests. Look at the Burger King symbols, see what that suggests. Look at the Delta symbols and see what that suggests. But all of those suggestions, all of those meanings do not add up to the letters. To define all of those symbols, you need the letters. The letters are the most important symbols and signs in our mind, but yet they are not defined. Why? When I look at it, A, what is an A? What is a B? But nobody don't talk in that reference point when they talk about alphabets or the letters. They seem that they just came from out of the sky, but they didn't. They're in scripture, they are relayed to as threads, pieces of threads that make signs and symbols. When you look at the universe or when you look at the world, it comes down to definitions. When you define something, that is just like you're being fed. Define, D-E-F-I-N-E. Fed. Do you see fed in the word define? We're given many different stimulus to move us, to control us, and what we might call branding. When you look at what we call branding, somebody's trying to send a message to your mind. They're sending this message to do this. They're sending this message to do that. But to utilize these messages, they themselves have to use the letters. So the letters, their self is the basis for all communication. When you look at the equal sign, when you look at the plus sign, you can't even explain them without the letters. Another word is history. History is I'm not going to say it's a trick word, but you have to be careful with history because you don't know who wrote it. It's a saying that the victors write history and the losers sing songs. And you know I know a lot of different songs. I went through a period of time, I was like struggling. And you can see I'm not going to say old man, but I'm up there. And at that time, I was going through some changes, and all of a sudden, one night, so I started thinking about alphabets. Where did that come from? I don't know. I asked myself that numerous times now. I laid down, and I said, first I got the A, and I saw what the A meant. Then I gave a definition to what the A. Then the B came. Then the C came. All the while I'm asking myself why I'm into it, but at the end of the night I had definitions for each letter from A through Z. I don't want to sit in front of you like I've come from out of the blue. I was a member of the Nation of Islam in 1970s. The same school, the same university that produced some of our greatest leaders, Minister Farrakhan, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, W.D. Muhammad. I came out of that same class. I wasn't in the same classroom. They were in Chicago. They were around the world. I got my knowledge in Savannah, Georgia, 1975. I wrote a little pamphlet, a little booklet. The name of it was American Mandy System. In the American Mandy System, I just had definitions of the alphabets, and I sent them off to the Copyright Office. And the Copyright Office called me back. And they asked, where did I get that from? Like it didn't come from me. And they told me that they were having trouble placing the evaluation because they were unfamiliar with such type works. All I had at that time was the meaning of the alphabets and certain tendencies, like the L shows limitations. When you put the S and the C together, that shows science. Simple little tendencies that kept growing and multiplying until I was like, wow, I see these patterns, I see these, and I was convinced that they could help, and if they couldn't help, they couldn't hurt. I put it away. The next time I picked it up, I was in Savannah, and I got to the point where I saw so many of the tendencies, and I saw so many things that I wanted to teach other people. I wanted to show other people. Then I was like, I'm gonna write a book. When I started to write the book, I didn't know where to start, so I called my brother who was familiar with my work because I used to go to Savannah and run my mouth with him all the time. He was like, relax, because you have the knowledge within, and to let the water out. So in this book, initially, the yield to search guided me to water. And when I started writing, I wrote water. When I end up from that first chapter, I already had a house. Moving from all the way from water to house, it was like growth. When I looked at it in the first chapter, in the second chapter, when we're talking about house, we got water. After water, we got rock to show stability. Where I could stand on my own. Any house that's built with a rock, could withstand the weather. So I learned conditioning. Then I went to standards, and then it was like where standards apply. What standards? So I'm going to seal. When I looked up seal and I started using the definitions out of the World Book Encyclopedia Dictionary, seal, when I saw like, seal is like branding. When you put a seal on it, you know. You know the identity, you know the time, you know the purpose. Then measure. When I looked at the word measure, so quite honestly, like it's me assure. Me assure when you look at the word measure. And it's measure shows your ability to see. Measure shows your ability to project. In my search for human development, it took me to the Nile Valley. The Nile is similar to what we call the line, the first line, the Nile. When you look at the Nile, you have Egypt and you have Ethiopia. When I looked at the language, the little bit that I could see, the little studies, the little tennis, I could see the Ethiopian effect. I could see the Egyptian effect. It was almost like a merger of the minds. And when you go and you study Egyptology, they talk about the upper valley and the lower valley of the Nile more than Egypt and Ethiopia. It's House of Warburg, House of Lowe, House of Windsor, that's Queen Elizabeth. All of us is built on houses. Where is our house? Why we don't have a house? What happened to our house? Matter of fact, when I did a little insight, we had the first house. They got their houses, they got their concept of house from us. We had the first house. The first house that I see was the house of Anu. I want to introduce you to a gentleman. His name is Sheikh Anta Diop. Excuse my pronunciation, it might be a little off. In this I was at work and somebody gave me a copy of this and I began to read it. The name of the book, The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. I already had the knowledge of the letters as far as I'm concerned and the tendencies. And I began to read Dr. Diop book, and it came across the phrase. That was the first time I heard the name Anu. When I heard the name Anu, I laughed. I was like, wow, that is so powerful. That's a powerful statement, and it's beautiful. A week later, I had Anu as the name of my house. Why? Because he said Anu, in his explanation, Dr. Diop, he said that Anu was the first monotheistic religion, meaning oneness. Anu mean one, Anu mean one that, Anu mean one right from left. Una means one. So when you hear everybody, one world order, one world is, they're really relegating themselves to Anu. Okay, when I went further into my studies, Dr. Diop, he explains that Anu was also a village. He says Anu was of a village. I've heard other people say that Anu was the first city of Kemet. With that said, with the knowledge of the letters I had, I did not know how to apply. My applications of the letters was off. Dr. Diop in his book, the first thing he said Anu. He said the first attribute of Anu was Ana. When he said that, that's light a candle, Ana, anniversary. Then he said the after Ana, another attribute was a no. So when I looked at the no, that's what I announced. I got my purpose with a nah, then I got my announcement. Then he also said, like, he was talking and he was like Senegal. He was from Senegal, and the word sin. He said the same words in sin and Senegal is the same. So that gave me direction on how to interpret, how to use the letters. In this book, Black Genesis by the prehistoric origins of ancient Egypt by Robert Boval and Thomas Brophy. They have a little brief chapter, and they dedicate it to Dr. Job, and it's well deserved. I named my house the House of Anu. In the House of Anu, I have the first person in the House of Anu, Isis, female, femininity. There we go, back to motherland. We're back to the motherland. Some people want to call it pagan. Some people want to call it different, backwards. Here we go, Isis, the House of Isis. So when I looked at Isis, I saw is. And there was a set pattern. That's when I started using the knowledge of patterns. And when I say patterns, that's something that you could retap. When you write down pattern, that says retap. I'm going to retap my resources. So I'm going to retap is. And is, you look up is, they say is reality. Here you go, you have your reality. Is. I assist, you have your femininity, you got your motherland. You always have brothers, we always hear us talk about the motherland. This is the motherland. And how to great the woman, Isis, first, this is her house, femininity. Was Isis the first who brought the language? Next, you have Osiris. If you look at Osiris, you see Isis. You still see Isis twice. The key to looking at Osiris is that circle, that O. That's indicate it's a ring. It's a discipline. It's a discipline. So you got Isis and you got Osiris. You need male, female for the world to continue. You got your, in some sense, you got your ability to have kids. You got your ability to grow. That's the future. You got your man and your woman. Next you have thought. Thoth. When I first got into the language, I just looked up thought. I looked up language, where language came from and all of that. And that was a surprising character. Thoth. Out of all of the names, you hear Thoth. Where did that come from? Egyptian. And when they teach you that Thoth in the masculine form, as they teach that Thoth was the originator of writing and mathematics. Nobody don't even argue that point. After Thoth, you have Amun-Ra. So you got Amun, A-M-O-N, and you got Ra. Until lately, I did not. In the house of Anu, in the house of Isis, when I first heard other people's explanations and how they interpret it, I don't know if the efforts was just sincere, jealous, or whatever, but I began to listen to other people's explanation of the house of Anu. And I saw that they divided it anew. Even in Dr. Job's book, The African Origin of Civilization, you will know that they will start with, in history, there were civilizations that believe in Isis. Then they'll say there were some civilizations they believe in Osiris. Then there was some civilization, Thoth reigned supreme. Then you got some people, Ra. They'll be like, Amun, rain, the ray from the sun. Amun-Ra. In the house of Anu, my interpretation of the house of Anu, Isis female, Osiris male. Thoth, their mindset. and their mindset, their thought, truthful equal. We'll get into that. They're truthful equal. It's almost like Isis, Thoth, Osiris. It's like the duality, or because you have two eyes giving you one vision. You have society going back to this is the house of Anu. What has happened is people have divided the house of Anu, and the characters and the personage and the house are so great. You have people that try to use them as building stones of civilization, but it cannot be. All of those are one house, but presented through history as different houses. The Job book, African Origins of Civilization, he starts off with Isis, then he goes to Osiris, then he goes to Thoth, then he goes to Amon-Ra. They stop. Individually. My thought was like, hold up, they're one. Bring them one, like in a fist. Bring them together and they form a house. And knowing the tendencies of the world, you hear that a divided house, you conquer a divided house. A divided house is easy to conquer. At the moment when I wrote this book, I put in the house of Anu, I put Thomas. I put Thomas Hall in the house of the book. I did that on faith. I did that on faith only because I never saw that before. In the origins of civilization, in the Black Genesis, the prehistoric origins of when they talk history, they don't begin with individuals. They begin with Isis. They begin with Osiris. They begin with Thoth. They begin with Amon-Ra. And they talk about their powers individually. In the book, The Secrets of the World by Manly P. Hall. That's the first in his book. He starts off with Isis. He starts off with Osiris. He starts off with Thoth. He starts off with Amon-Ra. But he introduced me to a new character, and that character was Thomas. He explained that in Thomas, in India and in the Middle East, they called it Tammuz. It's spelled Tammuz and other spellings. But that was my first time seeing Thomas mentioned in that house, the house of Anu. We establishing our house, the first house, the great house. When you look at Amon-Ra, you look at the word diamond. Somebody through that procession, let me go back and explain time and space. Time, we're talking in Black Genesis, the authors say that they could go back 1,000,000 years into the cold caves and see footprints. So that means civilizations been around for a long time, and that's where you get your tendencies to study the civilizations. But when you look at all the civilizations try to be better than the last civilization. That's like common growth. We could call it common growth. With Anu, you had different civilizations come along, and they took different segments of the house, and they propagated these different segments of the house. Ra, Amon. Look at the word diamond. When you see that word diamond, you look at those D's, but in them D's you see Amon. I am on. That's swag, and you brag, and that's almost a bragging word. That's a diamond. Diamond lasts forever. Amon-Ra lasts forever. That's what you seen expressed. You see the kings, people of the day And the people of yesterday, or whatever you ancients, we're the same people with the same characteristics and what we might call the same flaws. You put one in a leadership position, you put one, they have the same, you're dealing with the same mindset. And in many cases, the mindset is more intense. Because when you start studying Egyptology and that type of history, you really like dealing with more of what you might say the elites, the leaders. When you go in the tombs, you don't find really like the common person tombs. When you go in there, there'll be somebody of the kings, somebody of the, somebody in the know. Just like today, times go on, things rarely change. Times go on, things rarely change. So when you go into the Egyptology and the mummies and all of that, you're really talking about the elite. The elite, the kings, the queens, the people with money. And that's what you're talking about today. I'm gonna say this, the first conflict or the first entrance that gave me another horizon was the word it. Is it? How could that be? Is it? I had is. I saw is in Anu. I saw is in Genesis. I saw is Islam. I saw this. I saw Ra. I saw Rashid. I saw Ramadan. I saw the usage of the house of Anu. Every time I see the word monument, every time I see politics, I see the word nomination, I know that's Anu. Anu opened those words. Anu gave us those words. Those came from Anu, undoubtedly. But then I look, I see another entity out there. Shocked me. And I'm like, it was easy to detect once. It's like any other momentum. Once the momentum starts, my mind is no greater than any other mind. Once your mind opens and you go by natural progressive thought, natural progressive thought, then that's where you gain your answers. I saw it. What happened is, where did that it come from? I could not, it puzzled me. So I went back to my training. My training now is new. This is how I evaluate my language. Not from the lineal, which has the Nile in it, the way that our language was taught. This meaning this meaning that. Over here I got freedom of the language, freedom of thought with a new. So when I saw this, I had to get into it. What I saw, this is what I saw. I saw the Flavian, at that time, I read a book. I was introduced to a book. The name of the book is Caesar's Messiah by Joseph Atwell. Caesar's Messiah. Joseph Atwell. Flavian's signature edition. The Roman conspiracy to invent Jesus. That's what I'm like, wow, The Romans inventing Jesus. So I read the book. I would start reading the book, and it was like a language book. And the author, he talks about how the Romans, and the author, Joseph Atwell, states the last 2,000 years, history has been written by the Romans. I'm like, I just couldn't accept that, so that's a challenge. My last name, Hall, it's a Hall in challenge. So you call at me. When you say challenge, you call at me. So I started to investigate his work. And in the book itself, he starts to deal with the spelling of the words, just like, like with a new. When I see like use a new as the building part, this is how the language This is how the language is conducted. So in Caesar's Messiah, I was introduced to the Flavian dynasty. In the Flavian dynasty, you had Titus, you know. Let me go back. Joseph Atwell also states that all the history that we know come from two sources. The two sources is the New Testament and the War of the Jews, both written by Josephus. That didn't move me, that didn't move me. I had to catch up on that. I wasn't familiar with those terms. Flavian society, Flavian dynasty, going by my inclinations from what I learned by applying anew, the thoughts, concepts of anew. I saw words like what is, you got crisis, but I saw critical. It was like wish. You got WIS, then I look at edit. You got it. It was like a battle. I went 4-5 hours going from it to it. It is. I didn't know where the it came from. Then I looked at ISIS. Just like I did is. I took the word Titus. That's where the word it came from. It and us. Titus, just like when I use a new and other form that came to Titus. Titus was the king. Titus is a name, but Titus, and a lot of times you see through in history, eventually a name become a title. And then you got a title and Titus, that's similar words. So I got it, so I went on the it and the is, like in a new. Words like annual, words like fortunate, words that have words that give meaning, specific importance in that society. They were named that to reinforce or to keep your name alive. The MJ. What's your name? You introduce that so your name could always, that's your branding. That's your branding. So I looked at Titus. So that's where Titus, and I saw where they use it, and I went to Titus. Then I saw when you go to Titus, that's where they got Constitution. You always hear them, this was the Constitution, right? Constitution. First thing coming in your mind you see is Titus. You look at the word institution. Your hospital is an institution. Your police institution is a big word in this society. So that's reading Caesar's Messiah showed me the tendencies and the inclinations and the way the Romans scholars, Mr. Atwell in his book, he shows where in the spelling, even like his father, his father's name was Vespasian. When you look at investment, even the word severe, all of those, it's like they take in the building of their language and the building of their word, they took their family. Like if you had a son, you use your son. You writing it, it's your story. And not only that, when you finish, the people who always do that from long, as if they don't know the initial beginning, they're gonna follow script. And you never could break that cycle if you don't know. So when you got Titus meaning king. Another word for Titus is Timothy. You can see Timothy in the Bible and all that. That's another word for Titus. So you got it. And then you got us. So that's a part of the dynasty. I want to bring you to this attention in this little word right here, Flavian. What word does that remind you of? Flavor. They're giving us flavor. So you have Titus, the son, he was the king. Then you have the father, he used to be the king. He used to be, they make it difficult as possible for you to understand. That's the job. You know, you might have 3 or 4 you might have 3 or 4 this in the Bible. You might have, you know what I mean? They make it hard for you to understand. But in the Flavian dynasty, and these are real, as far as my knowledge, these are real people. I want to say lore. And this lore, L-O-R-E, that's the same as role, R-O-L-E. This lore. This is all I have to go on because for the last 2,000 years, the history has been wrote by the Romans. If I'm to believe Joseph Atwell, the New Testament and the war of the Jews. Okay? Through history, where I've learned, the Flavian dynasty won. So you got Titus, that's how when they conquered and they beat the so-called Jews or whatever, that's how they took over the world. You know, they you know, Judaism and all of that, they took over. You have Titus. You could go and you could look up Titus, you know, and you could see the coins. You could in history, it's not always you know, you might be in some error, but in history you could go in you got cave writings, hieroglyphics, you got many ways to pass on history. But the most solid ways to pass on history is the language. Because you could send somebody in a cave and they could redo the drawing. You could send somebody you know, to do other tasks and they could redo it. A standard is not only how we might live and the expectation of life. A standard, if you ever been like in a courthouse or big buildings and you see like action, like things that happened back in the day and, you know, big pictures, they call those standards. So your standard could be, just because you might be Michelangelo, your standard could be determined by your standards. But in the language is a part of the growth. In the Flavian dynasty, you have Titus. And in Titus, and one of the most, in our culture, let's talk in today's word, institution. When you look at institution, Titus. When you look at Constitution, Titus. You look at Vespasian, investment, vestige, showing lineage. Then when you look at his brother, Dome, I'm going to call him Dome, just for this purpose. Dome, you are your brother's keeper. He's Titus' brother. That's where the word modern came from. That's where domicile, do me. So you're not, when you go from, what they do is this is what you call nepotism in the language. So they're sending you to Titus because this is the Romans, you know, They're sending you to Vespasian. That's how they build the language. I want to add, before you came, I'm going to add a name to, because it's, when you study, this is the most information age ever. And you could get on the phone, you can get on your computer. I want you to check what I'm saying. I don't want you to just accept what I'm saying. During the time of the Flavian dynasty, the initials, you have what they call the Piso. P-I-S-O. They were like the rich people, like you hear people talking in the days, the Koch family, you know what I'm saying? They were aligned along with the kings, Titus and his family. Piso flavor. Some people say that was their last name. Some people say they intermarried, whatever like that. I was introduced to Piso. Piso Flavian is what we speak. It's the language we speak. Piso Flavian. They use their scribes. Scribes meaning the writers. You see the S and the C meaning scientific. They just didn't put it together. Scientifically, they took Piso and they made a world through nepotism, through no matter what you say, no matter wherever you go, you coming right back to Piso. Does that sound strange? In a way. But if you study history, the little history I've studied, you will find that there's a connection, always a connection between the rulership and religion. The kings and queens, they made religions. That's how they controlled the masses. Piso Flavian with Titus, they controlled the religion. They controlled the religions. They control everything that moved. It's theirs. It's yours, like Drake says, yours is yours. The Piso Flavian, I've been walking around like the last 2 years, and all I've been saying is, man, we speak Piso. We speak Piso. And people look at me, my family, some of them understand, they don't care, some of them do care. Some of my friends don't understand, some of them care. It's Piso Flavian. That I explained it. You speak in Piso, you speak in Pi. Okay, how do I know that? Because the situations and the glory of the society is going to dictate ownership. What is the sign of intelligence? Pi. Wow, you know. So you start looking, when you relate, take Pi, and when you take Pi, look up pious and see its relationship to God. Pious, piety. Then I kept reading, and I'm like, Piso, you know, pie in the sky. And I started looking at the significance of pie. It's a brother, Steve Coakley. He's passed away. Good brother, scholar. He's one of the other ones that I first heard him bring up pie. And when you look up pie, pie is associated with God. How do I know this? The name of this book is The True Authorship of the New Testament. Who was the author of the New Testament? This book claims Ariel's companions, Piso, a family. Also named Josephus. They wrote it. Josephus is the one, if the history is told, if the last 2,000 years of history is told by the Romans and written by Josephus, you get what I'm saying? Josephus is a Flavius. With Christianity, they'll tell you, they the ones who started the term God. They the ones who started Jesus, Paul, Mary, all of those other people that we hear about. They the ones who did it. The Piso Flavians. And then when they wrote the New Testament, I would like for you to get a copy of this, The True Authorship of the New Testament. So they really like safeguarding. They got you here, but they really got you more with the language. How do you break that? it's not like they have scenario set, like everything is so set, and you might need mountains and men and all of that. But if you look at the word enough, you see one. If you understand what I'm saying, you'll see that the Piso Flavians, they used the tendencies and the preferences of a new to start their own religions and their own language. Okay, how can I say that? They had a Pope Pius. I'm from Savannah, Catholic school was Saint Pius. So you get into that pi, that's the highest intelligence. And it teaches in all of those religions, those Abrahamic religions, of somebody in the sky. Who's in the sky? You ever heard the expression pie in the sky? Y'all young. Pie in the sky. Pie, who in the sky? Because our pie. Another name for pie, mountainous. Climb every mountain. That's another name. God, because every facility they use, even us. Studying Greek and Roman history, you will find that they don't make an attempt on originality. They'll tell you their strength is taking the known and improving it. Socrates, Plato, all of them, they didn't think medicine. Their argument, they took it and made it better. That's their argument. The Piso Flavian, where did they come up with that idea? When they came, when they fought the war, if the law is what they said, they fought the law, then they won it. They got the real. What the hell we gonna do with it? So they had to come up with ideas. They look at the situation when they had like the Hebrews, the Jews they fought. So most of us are not conquerors. Most of our minds don't think that way. But when you think of conquering the civilization, you think you'll go in there and after Merlin and Marlin come and everybody be Marlin. Yeah, that might be. But they let those people be they self. You don't come and destroy everything. It'll be easier just to let them keep them same beliefs. And you control that word. That's their way of control. I want to familiarize you with two other concepts. When you talk Greek, the Greeks always talk about black comedy. Why? Because it's funny for us to have all of this knowledge and they're controlling it. I got the New Testament. I see, okay, how did they, make it plain and simple, where did the Old Testament come from? Matter of fact, where did the Testament come from? My mind had to work on that. Okay, when you look in the past, just like the Piso Flavians started Christianity and it became powerful under Constantine 300 years later. Not no 5 years later, Christ was on the ground and that. 300 years later, they brought this law to the people. And they sold this law to the people. My mind asked me, where did they get it from? I remember being at a book signing at Madu bookstore, and a gentleman came up to me and he was talking, and I answered the question. I told him it was our fault that we were in the trouble or the position we're in now in the world, our perceived conditions. And he got mad with me, he was irritated. How could we do that? Because we show our patterns. And we humans, and Piso Piso, the Piso Flavians, the scribes, or whoever did that, Josephus or whatever, they look back in history. Who did they see? If this the New Testament, who wrote the Old Testament? Where did that come from? When you look at the word testament, it usually come with will and testament. You know, like when you, my last will and testament, my last will and testament. You look at testament, all the prayers, you know, like in Islam and all of Judaism, Christianity, when you finish your prayers, what word do you say? Amen. Amen Hotep. That's short for Amen Hotep. It's kind of almost like common knowledge. But as Menhotep, he introduced, I can't say he introduced it, but through this process, through this process, he introduced another entity. The entity like Isis is a set. A set is another name for Isis. You're going to hear all the scholars, check it. The first person that I heard that gave me this teaching is a brother, Sarah Surte Seti. He's a scholar. He's a student of Dr. Benyakian. When you go into so-called Kemet history, he's one of our top historians. He's a scholar, and he teaches us a set. When he talks of the ancients, he talks of a set more than he talks of Isis. But when you look, both of them, Isis are a set. When you look at the word New Testament, do you see a set? And through a set, that's where they started the religions, the Semitic religions. That's where you get your Moses. That's where you get just like over where they got Peter, Paul, and all of them. Over here, Amenhotep. Amenhotep is just like Titus. It might have started out as a name. Eventually, it becomes a title because you got Amenhotep 1, Amenhotep 2, Amenhotep 3, Amenhotep 4. Then they start changing the names, just like you see the name change all the way up to like Cleopatra and Mark Antony. All the way up. You could trace that. That's lineage. That's history. That's stuff you could put your hands on. You can't put your hands on Paul. You can't put your hands on Peter. You can't they changed the Peter name Paul name Saul. You can't put your name on none of that. You can't find them. You can't show no picture. You can't show no standard. You can't show them in no cave. You can't, none of that. But Piso, look it up. You can see the coinage. The Piso Flavians, they're the ones who built the Colosseum. They're the you could say Piso Flavian because we speak in this real Piso Flavian, but we speak Piso Flavian Rome. Rome is Piso Flavian. So when you see pi in the language, when you see Rome, when you look at the word democracy, all it says is Rome. When you look at the word syndrome, like if you're in that syndrome, Rome. But how can I tell? It has to be a sure way for me to lock you into this link. So every time you get a question, every time you get an emotion, I could bring you back to this link. So I'm going to have to name something in my semantic knowledge to bring you back to Rome. Why? How do I do that? The word memory. How do I bring you back to Amenhotep? The word mental. Amenhotep, you got name. Every time you see, without the problem, you got name. Amendment. And with a set, Asset. You see it on you could look at the brother Seti on his blogs, and you will see a set. You will see a set making prayer. You will see a set doing this. Asset. That's where we get the word asset from. That's an asset. You know, we just like Vespasian, vestige, investment, asset. They copy. They're good mimickers. Okay, memory. You got look at the word money. My one. You know, because I'm dealing with so many different inflections of a new, I don't try to define or try to define all my approaches. Like I have the embracing approach. Money, my one. You know, that's how we feel. Some of us might not say it. Who you want? I want money. Okay, look at the word memory. My Rome. You're saying I'm Rome. So when questions coming in your mind and when information coming in your mind, it's gonna straight to the Roman state of mind. But they didn't. How did they go back to I'm in hotel? Mental. When you start to, mental remnants. When you go over to asset, when you start talking settlement, set, ready, set, asset, and ISIS is the same. Going through the scholars for pi to exist as a language and as a culture, you got to hide Amenhotep. You got to hide Anu, because if you don't, they just grab that. This has become Anu. Pi is Anu. They use the same principle. What he did, Amenhotep. When I think of Amenhotep in my mind now, I can see a brother just smiling. Because here go, how many years ago that was, and now he's still in our face. When you say name, when you say even the word meaning, when you say this mean this, you're saying Amenhotep. That's how Piso learned that tendency. They didn't invent it. I can't, to me being a wordsmith, they're beautiful. To me being a wordsmith, wow. You mean you could do that? That's powerful. But the Piso in the World Book, I've been walking around for the last 2 years. You speak Piso. You speak Pi. You speak Pi. Pi lasts forever, just like Constantine. Constant, you see that. What's the only thing constant is change. Pi lasts forever. That's why they say the sign in intelligence is pi. Is like it never stops. Like 3 into 10. You see what I'm saying? You're always gonna get that continue. Pi. You're always gonna get that. Pi. But last 3 years, last 2 years, I'm in my friends, my family, anybody who listen to me. You speak pi, you speak pi, you speak pi, you speak pi, you speak pi. They look at me, they like, what are you talking about? Then I found something in the World Book Encyclopedia. Here we go, 3 years, 4 years. 3, just walking around. I'm pi. We speak pi. How do you know? Because all the signs show us pi. We call our people or people before us ancestors. They call their people pioneers. You're a peon. Pi. If you don't even, I have brothers and sisters, they be talking and they have so much to say. opinion. You don't have an opinion. You got pie. Your opinion is pie. If in many ways what I'm saying now reflects what word you hear, military. Espionage. Someone who see what? I see pie. I see pie. I see pie in the culture. It's an upliftment. It makes pie, the great pie. 3 years I heard people look at me, maybe I am a nut. Then I picked this up today. The earliest real book, origin, the development of English. The earliest source of English language was a prehistoric language that modern scholars call Proto-Indo-European, PI. I'm going to read that again. For all the people out there I've been saying this to. The earliest source of English language was a prehistoric language that modern scholars call Proto-Indo-European. Sound like weed or something, don't it? Indo, Photo. I got another name for it. I called it Piso, Flavian Rome. They can't come out and say pie. Y'all talking, that'll defeat the whole purpose. And they structured the whole world. The earliest source of the English language, pie. I hear brothers, you don't have an opinion. Your opinion is pie. Until you get the knowledge of that, and then once you get the knowledge, then you could have the ability to move past that, that source. Like I'm in hotel. He laughing. He smiling. Man, this same, man, how many years ago that I'm still rolling in y'all face? Wow. But I could take the concept of I'm in hotel and the concept of pie. That's anew. That's my way of bringing the language back to one. Without I'm on hotel inclinations of his feelings, his meaning, my meaning. But if you don't know that, that's the strange thing about the language. If you don't know that, it has an effect. So you might thinking I have a lot of brothers. I got free mind. Yeah, you got free mind. Yeah, pie. Especially if you don't know no of alternative, then you pie. I'm pie. I like to take this moment and put pie in the house of Anu. Kings ruled ancient Egypt throughout most of its history. Sometimes between 1554 and 1304 BC, the people began to call the king Pharaoh. The word Pharaoh comes from the word that means great house. The relationship starts with Boule, B-O-U-L-E. Boule, the meaning of Boule is advisor to the king. Advisor to the king, Boule. To advise the king, to be advisor to the king, that means you have some type of relationship. The beginning of the Boule was started by Mr. Henry Mitten in the early 1900s, 1904. When he started it, it was like to correspond or rebel against Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey had his Back to Africa movement. We had some of us didn't like that. We formed what we call a Talented Tenth. That was the original name of the Boule, the Talented Tenth. The sign of the Boule, their seal, what indicate them is the sign of the Boule, what they're indicated by is Sigma Pi Phi. Sigma indicates sign. Pi indicates Piso. The king is representative of the king. That's the seal. It's showing ownership. That means the participants has been vetted. That means that they could count on certain behaviors because these people have shown the capacity to conform to a promise. It's a promise made, and it's like a secret promise. I don't know if it's secret or not. I don't know the promise. But when I look at the sign, Sigma Pi Phi, Phi indicating a circle. We back to the circle. We back to Osiris. And that's who we're represented by. That's who I'm represented by. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I can't answer that question. We got to come together, discuss, debate, and get those answers amongst ourselves. But I want you to know, when you look at the fraternities and sororities, these are vetted people, meaning that they have made an exchange, they have made a promise. Some of it is secrecy, some of it not. Like in all other subject matters, everything comes in degrees. You got some that might not know anything I'm talking about. Then you got some on the higher level, they do. It's indicative in their name. It's indicative in their talk. Go to the dictionaries, go to the encyclopedias, look up Boule. Eventuality, evaluate. They take, like they take the best what you have. In today's world, I'm gonna make some people mad, but I'm true. I identify myself as a nigga. Nigga. Not because of some emotions or not because of, I do it because I'm a wordsmith. And when I take nigga, the word nigga, N-I-G-A or N-I-G-G-A, either way you want to pronounce it, and I put it in the same perspective I do the other words, it comes out like nig. And now let's look at nig. When Eli Whitney made the cotton, what? Turn gin around. So you got nig, okay, when you made that statement just now, nig is a part of the word original. You know, nig is a big part of the word original. When you start getting into this nig, okay, the greatest engine, okay, because we are a female-based society. We're a female-based society. The greatest engine in the world is what? And it has nig in it. The greatest engine in the world. Vagina. Generate. When you say nigga, that's like you generate. You're a generator. You're in that generation. I subscribe to say we are that as of a tribe. Just like you had the Indian tribes over here, you have the tribes in Africa, so-called Africa, we got tribes. That's our tribal name. But our language name is Anu. Because that's our foundation. That's Anu. But our nigga experience, that from up to slavery and all of that, there, we don't want to throw that away. We can't throw that away. You have the person who's talking, and you have the person who's listening. Many times we get to the point where we lose the person who's talking, because everything is on them. They have the floor, they have the mic, everything is coming out of them. But the real champion, the real person is the person who's listening, the person who receives, because they're opening up their mind, they're opening up their heart. And the person who is talking will be talking to walls without that person. So in this relationship, even though I'm talking, I'm listening. Even though I'm talking, I'm feeling. Even though I'm talking, I want your contribution. I want your ideas. We can't do this. One individual can't do it by themselves. An idea might be formulated, or an idea might be expressed, but just one individual can't do it by themselves. Many things that we talk about, even the formulation in the language, I need help. You need help. We got to sit down, we got to discuss our situations in the world today. We don't even know what to call ourselves. I can't tell you who to call yourself. I can only call myself. We could sit down, I could explain why I feel that way. You explain why you feel that way, and we come to a decision. It's the point now where we have to make decisions. We got to build our house. House meaning responsibility. I love America. And I know about America the Great, and you see about the great America, the War of Independence, and how we gained our independence, and how dominant we were in the world, World War I, World War II. But with a little investigation, I found out that America is what we call a crown colony. When I mean crown colony, they're controlled, they're a colony, and England, when you look at, like England, that's where we're supposed to gain our independence from. But England is another way of saying Roman influence, Roman rulership, Roman dominance. When you look at America, look up the company, look up the Virginia Company, look up the New England Company, and you will see the formulations and the discovery of America. Some of these things I'm saying are so obvious, but being who we are and the devices displayed upon us to keep us from knowing who we are, we're not just blind or ignorant to certain things because we are blind and ignorant people. We are blind and ignorant to certain situations because they intentionally keep us away from those situations, keeping responsibility away from us. Your kids, you're talking about families, you're talking about growth as citizens, you're talking about developing civilization for yourself to move, to grow, to be self-determined. America is a corporation. There have been scholars and there's been historians that always question the sovereignty of America from the so-called beginnings of America, the Independence War, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all of that. You had questions, and the final agreements and the final treaties. Where was America's sovereignty? Now, even though that's a question, I want you to look up, I want you to go to and look up the Constitution of 1871, the new Constitution, and see what that entails. And you will see that to question American sovereignty is not a totally insane idea, because it's what they call a crown colony. There's a book, I forgot the author's name, the book is The Crown Colony. Look it up. I'm not ashamed to say it's a crown colony. I don't see why a lot of us so-called blacks or African Americans, why would we be even up in arms about anybody saying that? Because we are talking to the wrong person. It's almost like we're talking to, you're talking to the assistant principal instead of the principal. When we whine and we go to America and we ask for this and we ask for that, maybe they're not capable of supplying it. We're not talking to the real power. The real power is who? The Piso, the Proto-Indo-European. That's the power. And our representation is the Boule. And if the Boule is not going to represent right, we're going to have to do something else. We're going to have to do something. We can't stay in the same mold. The mold we're in now. What is our projection? Food stamps? More government programs? What are we going to do? Get killed in all our cities? Well, who's going to answer this for us? Someone else? There was a guy on the other night on the blog, and it was like, we're the only people that been in slavery, that when we're so-called out of slavery, turn around and worship a deity look just like this person who put them in slavery. We need to wake up. We have the illusions in America, we have the illusions of freedom, but I'm not against America. It's not America. It's the total system. All the possessions of the Piso, of the Romans, of all of those are now in dispute. That might come through the prism of the British or the French. You're talking Roman Empire. You're talking Iraq. You're talking Iran. There's no such places as Iraq and Iran no more. Those governments are falling. And this is going to happen to all the colonies. All the colonies. And the bigger the colony, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. So when we look in America now, we see things and we don't understand what's happening. That's because true ownership is showing up. The truth is coming to light.